Today's Berry Bite, we're going to talk about whether the Castle Trust is safe. So is the Castle Trust safe? And so before we do that, we need to define what the Castle Trust is. And the Castle Trust is a form of asset protection trust. So it's like a revocable trust in that it can avoid probate and control the distribution. But what the Castle Trust does is that it avoids probate, controls the distribution, but also builds in asset protection. And that asset protection takes two forms. First of all, it protects you from lawsuits. So if you were to pull out, hit someone on a motorcycle, whatever you have in the trust would be protected. And then second, and this is what really appeals to a lot of people, is that it can start the 5-year clock ticking for Medicaid purposes. So it can protect you against the devastating cost of long-term care. Because we have this governmental program called Medicaid that will pay your nursing home costs. But to qualify for Medicaid, there's an asset test involved. And they look back 5 years to see if you moved any money around. So what the Castle Trust allows you to do is move assets into the Castle Trust. You remain the trustee. But now what it's done is started that 5-year clock ticking for Medicaid purposes. So if we can make it 5 years, then we can have Medicaid pay the base level of care, and then we have a pot of resources available to pay for any additional services to improve our quality of life. And then if we're a married couple, to ensure that if one spouse needs long-term care, the healthy spouse is not completely impoverished because they can access the funds in the Castle Trust. So this Castle Trust, the question is it safe? And the answer is yes, because it's based on principles that have been around since the 90s. And the government's aware of this type of planning. And not only are they aware of it, but they also do not look unfavorably to it. They don't penalize people who plan ahead. And the reason I can say this is that because so many attorneys were doing trusts like this as early as the 90s, in 2006, the government changed the rules. And what they said is we went from a 3-year to a 5-year look-back period because so many attorneys were doing trusts like this. They changed the look-back period from 3 years to 5 years. So that tells us the government is aware of this type of planning. Now, the question is, how do I know that they don't look unfavorably to it? Because when they made that change, they grandfathered in that prior planning. So whatever you had in the trust, if you set this trust up in 2005 and then they changed the laws in 2006, whatever they had in the trust would be grandfathered in. So the government's aware of it and they don't look unfavorably to it. So because of that, the question being, is the Castle Trust safe? I would argue that yes, it is. It's based on principles that have been around since the 90s. And let's say the government does change the rules again. Maybe they go from a 5-year to a 7-year look back. Most likely they're going to grandfather in any prior planning. So is a Castle Trust safe? The answer is yes.